Why is there a crate the size of a car in her yard? Who would leave something like that here? Aaliyah heard the whispers before she even reached the gate. The neighborhood stared at the massive white box stamped with a billionaire's crest, as if it had fallen from the sky. Her heart pounded, not with excitement but dread. She hadn't asked for this. She hadn't expected anyone to show up after what happened inside that mansion. And when she peeled back the gold-trimmed seal, what she found inside would shake the entire block. This is the story of a student, a sacrifice, and a gift that revealed a more profound truth. Welcome, story lovers. From where are you watching? Hit the like button and drop your city name in the comments so we can see how far our story travels. Aaliyah Johnson had spent most of her 20 years learning how to navigate the world with quiet determination. As one of the few black students at her elite university, she had grown used to the lingering stares, the whispered doubts, and the constant pressure to prove she belonged. But she carried it all with grace, pouring herself into her studies, her part-time tutoring job, in the plans she kept taped above her desk, medical school dreams written in careful handwriting, each step mapped out like a promise she refused to break. Her days were structured and predictable in a comforting way. Early morning classes, afternoons in the library, evenings helping her younger neighbors with homework at the community center. She loved that routine because it gave her control. In a world that often tried to shrink her, she had built a life where discipline became her shield. And with finals approaching, her focus sharpened. One exam in particular, a major biology test, would determine her standing in the program. She had studied until her eyes burned, certain she was prepared. But life had a way of finding cracks even in the strongest routines. Just 2 blocks from her apartment lived the Whitmans, a billionaire family known throughout the city. Their mansion sat behind tall iron gates and spotless hedges, a stark contrast to the modest neighborhood surrounding it. Aaliyah had only ever seen the Whitmans from afar, flashes of designer suits stepping into polished cars, the kind of wealth that made the world bend. To her, they were distant figures, irrelevant to her carefully planned life. Yet on a quiet Wednesday morning before her biology exam, something unusual happened. A sleek black car idled outside her building. Its tinted window slowly rolled down, and for a moment, Aaliyah felt a strange pull in her chest, as if the air itself shifted. She didn't know it yet. But her life was about to collide with theirs, unexpectedly, unfairly, and in a way that would test every belief she held about justice, opportunity, and the invisible boundaries drawn around people like her. Something was coming, and it had already begun. The morning of the exam began like any other, Aaliyah reviewing her notes one last time, her backpack packed neatly, her headphones in as she prepared to leave. But when she stepped outside, the same black car from earlier pulled up beside her. Before she could react, a woman stepped out, tall, elegant, dressed in expensive fabric that seemed untouched by the world around it. It was Eleanor Whitman, the billionaire's wife herself. Her expression was strained, desperate in a way that didn't match the perfection of her appearance. She approached Aaliyah with urgency, explaining that she needed help, real help. A crisis had unfolded inside the mansion, and somehow someone had told her that Aaliyah was the only person who could help. She didn't reveal many details, only that something had gone terribly wrong, and she desperately needed someone she could trust. Aaliyah hesitated. Her exam, her future, everything she had worked for. But the sincerity in Eleanor's trembling voice, the shaking in her hands, the pleading in her eyes, all of it pressed against her sense of responsibility. She thought about the families she helped at the community center, the children who depended on her calm presence. She had always stepped in when someone needed her, even at her own expense. It was who she was, so she made a choice. A choice that would cost her more than she imagined. Inside the car, the city blurred past. The closer they got to the Whitmans' estate, the heavier the air felt. When the iron gates opened, Aaliyah felt the weight of entering a world where she wasn't meant to stand. Not by society's standards, anyway. But she pushed the unease away and followed Eleanor into the mansion. Inside, servants rushed in, hushed and panicked. A broken staircase lay in pieces, and at the bottom of it sat an elderly relative who had fallen. Eleanor needed someone steady, someone gentle, someone who wouldn't panic. Aaliyah moved instinctively, checking breathing, stabilizing the woman, directing others despite the tension in the room. She had learned these skills during training at the community center, but applying them in the marble hallways of a billionaire's home felt surreal. For an hour, she worked tirelessly, stabilizing the injured woman until paramedics arrived. When they did, Eleanor clung to Aaliyah with gratitude so intense it startled her. She thanked her repeatedly, promising she would make it right. But when Aaliyah checked her phone, her heart dropped. The exam had already ended. Panic flooded her chest. She had never missed an exam, not once. She emailed her professor immediately, explained the emergency, and waited, hoping for compassion. Instead, she received a short response. Policy states no makeups unless documented by the university. Unfortunately, this cannot be accommodated. Her pulse hammered. This exam counted for nearly half her grade. The thought of losing her place in the program made her stomach clench. She reached out to Eleanor, hoping the powerful woman would help verify the emergency. But days passed. No response. No explanation, only silence. And then one morning, Aaliyah heard murmurs outside her window. Neighbors gathering, pointing, whispering. Something was sitting in her yard, something big, something wrapped, something that didn't belong in her world. And when she stepped outside, her breath caught in her throat. The object in her yard wasn't just unusual, it was impossible. A massive white box, the size of a small car, sealed with gold-trimmed tape and stamped with the Whitman family crest. Neighbors stood in clusters, phones half raised, unsure whether to record or retreat. Aaliyah felt the weight of every stare press against her skin as she approached it, her heart pounding with dread rather than curiosity. She slowly tore the tape, each rip echoing through the tense morning air. When the lid finally lifted, a sharp gasp spread through the crowd. Inside was a luxury car key, a velvet envelope, and neatly folded documents. A complete scholarship package, signed, sealed, and paid for by the Whitmans. Tuition, housing fees, everything. It even included a letter confirming the medical emergency she had responded to and an apology for the silence. But beneath the papers lay something else, something that made her stomach twist. A handwritten note that read, "We hope this makes up for the inconvenience. People like you deserve a chance. People like you." The words burned. It wasn't generosity. It wasn't gratitude. It was a reminder of the imbalance that had shadowed her entire life. A billionaire family believing their money could erase the consequences she faced. Consequences they would never understand. They hadn't tried to advocate for her, call her school, or acknowledge the damage. They simply tried to buy her silence. In that moment, as the neighborhood watched, Aaliyah realized she was standing at the most defining crossroads of her life. Would she accept what they assumed she'd be grateful for? Or would she expose the truth behind the gift? Dear audience, where are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments. Aaliyah stood before the open box, the scholarship papers fluttering in the breeze as if unsure of themselves. The neighborhood watched, waiting for her to smile, to celebrate, to accept the billionaire-sized gesture meant to fix everything. But she didn't move. Not at first, because she understood something powerful in that moment. This wasn't an act of kindness. It was an attempt at erasure, a way to wipe away guilt without confronting the harm. She closed the box gently, the scholarship untouched. Later that day, she walked to the dean's office, carrying not money but truth. She explained the emergency, the silence, the note, the way her future had been jeopardized because she had chosen compassion over self-preservation. And for the first time in her academic journey, someone listened. The university launched an investigation, and the missed exam was rescheduled. News spread. Not because Aaliyah sought attention, but because injustices have a way of demanding to be seen. The Whitmans eventually issued a public apology, one written not in money, but in accountability. And though it didn't undo the past, it marked a shift. A recognition that power must be used responsibly. Aaliyah passed her exam. She continued her studies, but she carried with her the weight of a lesson she would never forget. Sometimes doing the right thing costs you, but not speaking up can cost far more. Her story was not just hers. It echoed the experiences of countless others navigating a world tilted against them, and the lingering question remains: how many more stories like hers it must unfold before true equality stops being a promise and becomes a reality? Thanks for watching. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories.